Evelyn Carter had learned to measure her days in small, quiet tasks. Things that didn't demand much from her. Things that made the house feel lived in even when it was empty. The kettle had just clicked off, sending a thin ribbon of steam toward the window, and she was wiping the counter in slow circles as if the shine itself could keep her steady. Outside, late light leaned against the glass, gentle and indifferent. The world looked the way it always did, which was part of the problem. Nothing warned her that a single sentence could tilt everything. Her phone buzzed once against the wood, a soft interruption. She almost ignored it. Lately, she tried not to jump at every notification, tried not to train her body to hope. But the screen lit up with his name, her son's name, and habit, older than thought, pulled the device into her hand. For a moment, she simply stared at the letters, the way a person might stare at a closed gate they'd built themselves, believing it would never be used against them. The message was brief, polite. It read like something written after careful rehearsal, the kind of calm that doesn't soothe but seals. Mom, I need you to stay out of my life. Please respect that. No anger to argue with, no messy accusation that could be corrected, no opening where her voice might fit. Just a line drawn with clean ink. Evelyn's thumb hovered over the words as if touch alone could soften them. The cloth in her other hand slipped, damp and heavy, and she didn't notice until it hit the counter with a quiet thud. She read it again, slower this time, as though a different pace might change the meaning. It didn't. The kitchen stayed bright. The kettle kept breathing. A car passed outside with the casual rush of someone going somewhere. Evelyn felt her chest tighten in a way that wasn't dramatic, only deeply inconvenient, like grief arriving in work clothes. For a few seconds, she could hear the old part of herself rising, the part that knew exactly what a mother was supposed to do. Call, explain, apologize for whatever it was even if you didn't know yet, keep knocking until the door gave. But another part of her, quieter and tired in a way she'd never admit out loud, held still. She could picture him writing it, sitting somewhere that wasn't her home, choosing his words like stones to stack into a wall. She could see the care in the phrase, please respect that, and it hurt more than blunt cruelty ever could. Respect, in his mouth, sounded like distance dressed up as maturity. It sounded like a child asking for air while also asking her not to breathe too loudly. Evelyn lowered the phone to her lap and sat down at the small kitchen table, the one where she used to cut his sandwiches into neat triangles because he swore they tasted better that way. The memory came without warning. Not as a story but as a sensation. The weight of a lunchbox, the warm impatience of a boy tugging on his shoes, the bright certainty that she would always be needed. Her throat tightened again, and she swallowed as if she could push the feeling down into someplace more manageable. She glanced toward the doorway, half expecting him to walk in and laugh at the seriousness of it all, to say he hadn't meant it that way, that he'd just been frustrated, that of course she was still his mother. The hallway remained empty. The house remained obediently silent. Evelyn stayed at the screen until it dimmed, then lit it again with a tap, as if repetition could create a crack. Her finger moved to the reply box and stopped. Words lined up in her mind, soft ones, pleading ones, angry ones, and she let each of them pass without choosing. There was a particular humiliation in realizing that anything she wrote might become proof against her, something he could show someone else to justify the cut. She imagined her message living in his phone like an unwanted object, and the thought made her hands feel clumsy. The simplest response was to do what he asked. The hardest response was to do what he asked. So she set the phone down, face up, not dramatic about it, just careful, as if it was something that could bruise. She reached for the cloth again and wiped the same spot she'd already cleaned, her motions smaller now, more precise, the way a person moves when trying not to fall apart. Outside, the late light shifted, and the steam from the kettle faded into nothing. Evelyn kept her eyes on the counter, kept her breathing even, and went quiet, because sometimes love looks like holding back, and sometimes holding back is the beginning of a different kind of storm. After the message, the kitchen felt too tidy, as if the house had been practicing for a moment like this for years. Evelyn moved through the rooms with the same careful steadiness she used after the funeral. Small steps, quiet hands, no sudden turns, because she had learned long ago that grief did not always arrive as a dramatic collapse. It could arrive as a chair left empty, a coat that never came back from the hook, a single place at the table that stayed set in her mind even after she stopped setting it in real life. Her husband had been gone for years, taken in the ordinary way tragedy often takes people, not with a warning, but with a phone call that turned a life into a before and an after. Evelyn had not been given the luxury of falling apart for long. There was a boy to raise, homework to check, lunches to pack, rent to make on time. She learned to stretch herself into two parents without calling it heroism, because calling it heroism would have meant admitting how heavy it felt. She gave the way some people breathe, without counting, without keeping score, without expecting applause for the invisible labor that held a home together. If he needed money, she found it. If he needed time, she made it. If he needed a safe place to land, she became it, even when her own knees ached from standing for everyone else. And slowly, without either of them naming it, her help stopped looking like love and started looking like something guaranteed. Her phone calls became routine. Her check-ins became background noise. Her presence, once a comfort, became an expectation, steady, reliable, and therefore easy to overlook, until the day he could say "stay out of my life" as if he were asking her to stop by less often, not asking her to step out of the story entirely. Evelyn didn't answer the message that day, and when morning came she didn't answer it then either. The impulse to reach for her phone rose in her the way thirst rises, automatic, insistent, but she let it pass without feeding it. There was a strange dignity in doing exactly what he asked, not because she agreed with the cruelty of it, but because she refused to tame herself into a pleading shape just to be allowed a place in her own child's life. She had spent too many years smoothing sharp edges, absorbing moods, making herself smaller so peace could fit in the room. This time, she did not shrink. She simply stepped back. She stopped calling. The little rituals fell away one by one. The quick "Are you home safe?" after a storm, the Sunday check-in that used to feel like love and lately had felt like an intrusion. She didn't send the harmless articles he might like, didn't leave soft reminders that she existed. When she passed his favorite snacks in the grocery aisle, she kept walking. When she caught herself rehearsing messages in her head, careful ones, gentle ones, she let them dissolve before they could become another offering. The silence wasn't an empty space. It was a boundary with weight. Evelyn held it like a steady line in her hands, calm and unshaking, and the quiet began to change shape around her. It stopped feeling like punishment. It started to feel like a decision, one that shifted something unseen, as if the power in the relationship had quietly moved for the first time in years. At first, nothing dramatic happened, which was exactly why he didn't notice. Evelyn had always worked in the quiet spaces of his life, the places that didn't announce themselves as help. She wasn't a spotlight presence. She was the person who remembered, the person who caught what slipped, the person who filled gaps before anyone could trip over them. When she went silent, those gaps didn't open like a wound all at once. They opened the way hairline cracks open in winter, small, slow, and easy to ignore until the whole surface starts to shift. The first things to break were the smallest. A reminder she would have sent didn't come, so an appointment got missed and turned into a rescheduling fee he hadn't expected. A bill that had always been paid on time, because she used to nudge him or double-check a date he forgot, slid past the deadline and quietly gathered a penalty. A package he assumed would be picked up because it always had been stayed sitting at the wrong address. And he spent an afternoon on hold, jaw tight, voice strained with the kind of frustration that used to dissolve the moment he called her. He told himself it was just a rough week. Everyone had rough weeks. He told himself he didn't need anyone hovering, that he was handling things. Yet a strange irritation began to follow him through his days, not aimed at any one problem, but at the feeling of having to carry everything at once. He noticed how many decisions stacked up when no one was smoothing the path ahead of him. He noticed the silence in his own phone, the lack of a name that used to appear like clockwork, steady and predictable. Still, he assumed it would pass. Evelyn always circled back. Evelyn always reached out, eventually, even if she was hurt. In his mind, her love had become a natural resource, always there, always renewing, something he could draw from without thinking about the cost. So when the quiet kept holding, when day after day went by without a single check-in, his certainty started to wobble. Confusion came first, then the faint edge of unease, like someone realizing the lights have been off for hours and they never heard the switch click. It started with a message that tried to pretend nothing had happened. A simple, careless question tossed into the quiet as if it were a pond that would ripple and settle the way it always had. He wrote her name without mom, like distance could be softened by casualness, and asked if she still had the login for something he couldn't find. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the door he'd closed, only the expectation that the door would open when he knocked. Evelyn saw it. The notification lit her screen while she was folding towels, the fabric warm from the dryer, the kind of ordinary warmth that suddenly made the coldness of his words feel sharper. She didn't delete the message. She didn't block him. She simply set the phone down again. The same calm motion, the same steady line. The silence held. A day later, the tone shifted. The next message arrived with more words, as if length could cover what humility was missing. He asked if she was okay, then added a quick, defensive line about being busy. After that came the first crack of nerves, an unanswered call that rang out into nothing. Then another message with a harder edge, irritation trying to disguise itself as concern. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't say he'd been wrong. He kept circling the truth, like someone walking around a mirror they don't want to face. And the longer she stayed quiet, the less he could blame the world outside himself. There was no argument to twist, no dramatic exchange to replay and use as proof that she was too much. There was only his own sentence, "Stay out of my life," echoing back at him in the form of exactly what he'd demanded. Evelyn's silence didn't punish him with anger. It left him alone with his choice, and that was what began to press on him. Some lessons arrive with raised voices. Others arrive with a quiet that refuses to rescue someone from their own words. The change didn't come as a grand confession. It came the way most real realizations do, through a slow, uncomfortable noticing. His messages stopped trying to sound casual. They stopped pretending he was in control. The questions became sharper, then softer, then strangely careful, as if he had finally understood that he wasn't speaking to a service he could restart, but to a person who could decide she was done being used in small, invisible ways. One night, long after the sun had left his windows, he sent a line that didn't ask for anything practical at all. He asked if she had really stopped, and for the first time, the words carried the faint outline of fear. Evelyn read it in her living room with a lamp on beside her, the kind of warm pool of light she used to leave on when he was late coming home as a teenager. The memory flickered through her, her younger self listening for tires on gravel, telling herself she wouldn't sleep until she heard the door. She felt that old instinct rise, the reflex to run back into the role that kept everyone else steady. But she didn't move. Her hand stayed relaxed in her lap. Her breathing stayed even. The quiet in her house was no longer a punishment. It was something she had earned. From a distance, she could almost see the moment it landed for him. That stay out wasn't a setting he could switch off and on depending on what he needed. It was a choice with weight. If he wanted her absent, then she would be absent. Not halfway, not temporarily, not until he got lonely. Evelyn didn't celebrate that realization. She didn't rush to reward it. She simply let it exist. And in that restraint, her peace held its shape. In the days that followed, Evelyn's life did not become louder to fill the space he left behind. It became clearer. The quiet she'd been afraid of for so long turned out to be something she could live inside without disappearing. She made tea and drank it while it was still hot. She slept through the night without waking to check a phone that had trained her nerves for years. She took slow walks, not as a distraction, but as a way of letting her own thoughts finally catch up to her. Somewhere in that steady rhythm, she understood the truth she hadn't wanted to name. Closeness had hidden how much she was carrying, and distance had exposed it without cruelty. Her son's messages still lived on the screen, waiting. Evelyn didn't erase them, and she didn't run toward them. If reconciliation came, it would come differently than before, built on respect, not convenience, and on accountability, not habit. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't begging to be chosen. She was simply choosing herself, calmly, with a dignity that didn't need an audience. If Evelyn's silence had a lesson, it wasn't that love should be withheld. It was that love without boundaries teaches people the wrong shape of you.